Hello YouTube, good to see you back. Today we are going to rank the Espers in Final Fantasy VI. This will include how good the summon is, the level up stats, and the magic that we learned from them. We won't be looking at the GBA Espers, as those are platform specific, and honestly, I have little to no knowledge about them. Overall, they look pretty good and would probably be near the top of the list anyways, and you should grab them regardless. Breaking down how we are rocking it today, we have 4 rhetorics to follow. Our standard accessibility ranking. When are we able to actually grab the Esper during the adventure? How useful is the level up bonus, as far as what you get out of it? How useful is using the summoning ability itself? And, last but not least, how useful are the spells that the heckin' thing teaches us? Everything is going to be out of 10, which means some will suffer a little bit in the ranking due to not having a level up bonus. With that out of the way, let's peek at what we got going on. Number 27, Crusader. To be honest, I hate this guy. After you spend your whole adventure killing the 8 magic dragons, you unleash the scary and mysterious Crusader. This means that you don't get him until very late, as 2 dragons are in the final dungeon, which would also mean you are pretty much ready to finish the game. While the spells he teaches are quite alright with Meteor at times 10 and Meltdown at times 1, the fact you get it so late means either you're grinding in Kefka's Tower or leaving Kefka's Tower just to get it and walk through it again. The level up bonus is MP plus 50%, but again, you're probably ready to finish the game, so that doesn't really seem super worthwhile anymore. Now, as for the summon itself, boy howdy. Non-elemental damage, as a handful of goobers fly onto screen and nuke everything with a spell power of 190, and ignoring split damage. Magic defense does come into play, but while that's the case, unless you have a lot, everyone is getting nuked. And when I mean everyone, I mean the enemies and you. There is a targeting bug in Super Nintendo that can make the caster not get hit, but it is situational to set up and a little awkward. Accessibility sucks with it being so late in the game, and I'm giving it a 1 out of 10. While the level up bonus is a juicy extra 50% of whatever MP you would gain on a level up, you're probably not going to level up much at this point anymore, and I gotta give it a 4 out of 10 for that. Unless you are magic defensively set up to not die, the summon itself won't be very useful because you'll be dead. So unless you're set up and ready for it, and ready to take a whole lot of damage, I need to give it a 1 out of 10. The spells are quite nice, albeit late in the game. Meteor won't take a long time to learn, since it is a times 10 learn rate, so I'm going to give this overall a 13 out of 40 summon. At number 26, we got Unicorn, one of the Espers that we save in the Magitech factory, and there are a lot. He's a pretty early Esper we get, which is good. One of the major drawbacks is we have no level up stat bonus. The other side is, other than Kira and Asuna, the rest of the spells aren't of any particular interest. Protect is nice to have, but at a 1x learning rate, you generally have better things to do with your spell list at that point in time. The summon in a general sense won't be super useful, but it does cure the status elements of the party, which can get you out of a sticky situation. So it's not that Unicorn is a bad Esper, it's just extremely underwhelming in comparison to what is coming up. It also shouldn't be slept on, as you'll wish you had it on at some point, especially when things go sour. Being a save from the Magitech factory means it's one of the earlier Espers we get, giving it a nice 7 out of 10 accessibility. However, with no level up bonus, we have to give it a 0 out of 10, and the spells being lackluster at 3 out of 10, we can only prey on the summon effect being good, and since it's quite niche and situational, I can only give it a 5 out of 10 at best, for a total score of 15 out of 20. 25 rings in Ragnarok. This dude only has one redeeming factor, and we all know what it is. But let's break it down. He teaches Ultima, and that's his one redeeming factor. It's a good spell taught very slowly, at times 1. Let's look at the rest of the Esper, shall we? He has no level up bonus, which is bad. You can only get him once you save Locke from the Phoenix Cave, so you're probably not doing that right off the hop once you actually get your airship in the World of Ruin. The summon itself is interesting. You can potentially kill an enemy and change it into an item. The chances on it hitting are variable depending on the enemy as far as I'm aware. It wouldn't be worth it to check it on every single enemy, but there are lists out there on the interwebs, so you can be certain for certain items that you want to try, but even then sometimes it can be a little painful. The accessibility, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, which isn't terrible, but again, another 0 out of 10 since we have no level up bonus. 2 out of 10 on the summon usefulness because of how niche and honestly how inaccurate it is. There are spots where you're probably happy you're going to use it, but there's a lot of spots where you're going to not want to use it whatsoever. We're going to give it an 8.5 out of 10 for the spell it teaches, because even though it's pretty slow, it is like the spell in the game. It doesn't get a perfect score on it, because even though it's the best spell in the game, it does take a bit to learn, and it takes a while for us to get to a point of being able to learn it. Overall, 15.5 out of 40 Esper at the end of the day. Coming in at 24, I get a name that I can barely say. Midgard Sormer, I think. It's a nightmare of a name from my small prairie boy brain, but we gave it a shot. You'll find this boy sitting inside a skull on Umaro's house cave. This requires you to beat up another Esper to even get to this point, which is Tritalk or whatever the other name is, we'll get to there. But you can do it pretty close to as soon as you get to the World of Ruin access. The level up bonus early on in the World of Ruin can be decent with HP plus 30% on level up. And what this means is if you were to gain 100 HP on a level up, the bonus will grant an extra 30 on top of that for a total of 130 HP. The summon is alright, with it being Earth Elemental. It doesn't hit flying enemies, but with the spell power of 93, it's nothing to scoff at. It does suffer from split damage and magical defense, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10 on this. The level up bonus is one of the heftier HP bonuses, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. The spells learned aren't anything amazing. All we really care about is Quake, and that's at a ×3, and then a couple of gravity spells as well. And we all know that I am not a fan of the gravity spells. Overall, this is a 17.5 out of 40 Esper, but on the other hand, the summon does look sick. Number 23, Shiva, the Ice Queen herself, makes an appearance, lower than I actually thought she would, and we'll see where she suffers. We get her earlier in the Magitech Factory, just beside Ifrit, which is the second batch of Espers we actually get access to. She suffers from having no level up bonus, and that's one of the greatest weaknesses. The summon itself is obviously Ice Elemental. It's not super strong, but she's also a really early Esper, so it makes sense that it's not super strong. She gives access to Blizzara, which is a nice tier 2 spell to have. It's taught at ×5, which is not horrible at all. You also get Kirin Osmos as a side dish to the Blizzara platter. While she is accessible quite early on at an 8 out of 10, there's no level up bonus for a big hurt of 0 out of 10. The summon being Ice Elemental can be useful if you find things that are weak to ice. We'll give it a 5 out of 10, even though the spell power is pretty low at 52. She is still pretty decent early on. The spells I feel are a solid 5 out of 10, especially again in the early game. Honestly, I'm just trying to say she's carried early game for an 18 out of 40. At 22 comes in my boy Alexander. As much as I love this summon, I'm kinda sad to see him this low on the list. But instead of dwelling on the sad, let's look at the numbers. If you get Cyan early, as the game wants you to do, you can finish Doma Castle, so you can do the Dreamscape section and actually get access to him. You can do it pretty early in the World of Ruin, but it might be somewhat challenging. Once again, there's no level up bonus on this, which hurts our candidate a lot. However, the summon effect is pretty sick. In some versions of the game, he's holy, and in others he's non-elemental. Honestly, the non-elemental is a bit of a debuff, but boy, that animation is sick, dude. He is probably one of my favorite summons in the game just to actually use. He has a fun spell to learn, with Holy being the big draw. Having Sheln Protect at ×10 is also super cool, and Dispel and Asuna at ×10 and 15 respectively. That's also a really easy gain. It feels bad that him being a 5 out of 10 Esper grab and having no level up bonus at 0 out of 10 hurts my boy so much, since his summon I think is an 8 out of 10 and the spells are worth a good 6 out of 10, which means that while the other two rhetorics are super low, he still comes out at 19 out of 40. 21 brings in Kirin. Who would have thought that the wimpy horse is higher than a castle of lasers? Kirin is found in the first batch of Espers we get a hold of, which helps his case quite a bit. Another Esper, again with no level up bonus, and the summon is situational as well. The summon puts a regen on your entire party, and the regen effect is based off of your stamina stat, so you'll see varying degrees of regen ticks. The spells, while basic, are quite nice to have early on. Quick access to Cure, slow access to Cura and regen, but getting Poisona and Libra for the curious gamer, it can set you up to stay alive and healthy and informed early on. Not a lot to say about our dear horsey boy, with him being the earliest we can grab, with some others. He gets a healthy 9 out of 10, but the 0 out of 10 on the stat bonus is also another big sad. The summon can be useful for keeping people alive, even if by a small margin, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Finally, while not the most amazing of spells, they can make a world of difference early on, and I'll give that a 6 out of 10 for a grand total of 20 out of 40. Starting off the top 20, we have Phoenix. Again, this is another Esper I'm kinda sad to see here. The big killer, surprise surprise, is no level up stat bonus. We also get this boy a bit later in the World of Ruin, having to go through Phoenix Cave. It makes sense. The summon is cool, although quite situational. It revives anybody dead. So generally, to make this worth it, you'd want 2 or more people dead to make it a worthwhile summon, which also means if you have 2 or 3 people dead in your party, the one that isn't dead needs to be the one with the summon, so you can see how it can get a little weird. The spells are the winner chicken dinner for this summon. Check this out, you get Raise at times 10. Arise at times 2, Re-Raise at times 1, Curaga at times 2, and Faraga at times 3. Might take a bit of grinding, but oh baby, you will be riding some sick spells afterwards. Again, I love this Esper, and it hurts me to have it barely be top 20 of 27. 5 out of 10 accessibility, 0 out of 10 for no bonus stats, 6 out of 10 summon, and oh yeah, 9 out of 10 spells. Leaves us still with a bit of a Sag 20 out of 40. 19 brings in Carbuncle. If you know Final Fantasy, you know Carbuncle. He's cute, maybe fluffy, and will save us from magic, mostly. Grabbed along with the schwack of Espers we save at the end of Magitech Factory, he is Mr. Reflecto. The summon puts a party-wide Reflect on, which can help a ton versus magic-heavy enemies. Careful though, healing all of a sudden becomes a huge issue. No level up bonus, cause why would we even have one this early on in the list? The spells, albeit defensive, are nice to have. Obviously Reflect is the big one, but Haste, Protect, Shell, and Teleport are all nice to have as well. Everything in the end of the Magitech Factory will be a 7 out of 10, and everyone with no bonus stat level will be a 0 out of 10, just like our boy here. The summon can be useful if you know what's coming up, or even reactionary for a good 7 out of 10, and the spells are decent enough to be a 6.5 in my book. This brings our dear boy Carby to 20.5 out of 40. 18 has Cait Sith. This feels a little like a meme, but he's going to be boosted by 2 Rhetorics. Found in the first 4-pack of Espers, and actually has a bonus on stat level up. It is Magic +1, which is nice for how good magic is for damage out versus effort in. The big stinker of this Esper is his summon and his spells, funny enough. The summon is a confuse amongst enemies that can be hit by it. Good for sticky situations, but overall not something you really think about doing except for the lulls. The spells we learn aren't mind-blowing, but we learn them pretty quick. Confuse times 7, Imp times 5, Float times 2. Nothing to write home about, but they are there. Funny enough, the Rhetoric says he's a better Esper than some of the more powerful ones, with a 9 out of 10 accessibility, 7 out of 10 on that sexy level up bonus, but 2.5 out of 10 on the summon, and 3 out of 10 on the spells learned. Still gets Kitty Cat at 21.5 out of 40. With Seraph coming in at number 17, this one is a weird one to figure out, because you can buy her earlier in World of Balance for more money, or wait until World of Ruin for less money, and she's about making people feel better and safer. So it depends on how much money you want to save. The smart money says you get her later on, but because you can access her earlier, I'm gonna make the assumption that you'll just go ahead and do that, I guess, for this list. Even though she suffers from no level up bonus, her summon is a party-wide heal with a spell power of 18. It's nothing amazing, but it is still nice to have. She is also the best for this function until the World of Ruin, so she can be somewhat useful for a good chunk of the game. She is your White Mage creator, teaching you Raise at times 5, Cura times 8, Cure times 20, and Regen times 10, and Asuna at times 4. She also looks so sweet and innocent. It doesn't grant her any extra points, I just thought it was worth pointing out. Since she can be found shortly after Magitech Factory, I'll give her a 7 out of 10. 0 out of 10 for not having any bonuses, but here comes the fun stuff. A nice little heal for a 6.5 out of 10, and a fun sweet animation on top of it. And your White Mage builder with all those nice spells for a 7 out of 10. This Esper is our highest placing no stat bonus on level up, with a 21.5 out of 40. 16 brings in Siren. Number 16, we find our dear girl Siren. She is found at the top of Zozo, making her one of the first grabs as well. Her whole shtick is a field-wide silence with a hit rate of 136, so it missing should rarely happen unless an enemy simply can't be silenced. Her level up bonus is a HP plus 10%, so it's nothing amazing, but it is something. The spells she teaches are Sleep times 10, Silence times 8, Slow times 7, and Fire times 6. Useful in situations and certain bosses, but not something you would use in most fights. While she is grabbed really early on with a 9 out of 10, her level up bonus is only okay, granting her a 5 out of 10. The summon itself is quite niche, but not quite useless, so I feel it'll be about a 3 out of 10. The spells are okay at best, great for bosses in certain spots, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10 with that, for a total of 22 out of 40. Number 15 is gonna have you yelling out Free Willy, cause oh boy, here comes Bismarck. There's a lot of survivors from Magitech Factory, and Bismarck is yet another one of them. He's one of the better level up bonuses with a +2 to strength. The spells he teaches aren't amazing, but the rate you learn them gives you a good base for most barebones casters. You get Blizzard, Fire, and Thunder at ×20, and Raise at ×2. He gives us access to water elemental damage through his summon, though it is only a spell power of 58 and it does suffer from split damage. It is still good to have. 7 out of 10 accessibility, you already know what it is. The level up bonus is a solid 7 out of 10, which is the big kicker for this Esper. 5.5 out of 10 on the summon, which is good for things like cranes and other things weak to water. And since this is our only source of water for most of the game, it's good to have that in your back pocket. 3 out of 10 on the spells, you learn them fast, but you aren't exactly breaking any ground. You basically use this guy to get strength on your characters. 22.5 out of 40 overall. Number 14 brings in Phantom, another of the MTech Factory crew, cause there's a lot of them. He can be either really good or really bad, depending on how you use him. He can establish a party-wide vanish, which means all physical attacks will miss. The issue with this is your magical evasion goes down to 0. So if you use it against something magical, you're just asking to get nuked down. So he does require some situational awareness and enemy knowledge. The spells we care about are Vanish and maybe Berserk, mostly because I hate gravity. The level up bonus is MP plus 10%, which could be nice early on if you want more MP, but the game is pretty good at giving you enough HP and MP to survive most things, assuming you don't run from too many enemies in your adventure. 7 out of 10 accessibility, the level up bonus I'll give a 4 out of 10. The summon usefulness, although a bit niche, I'll still give it a 7 out of 10. The spells learned are only a 4 out of 10, but overall that still gets you a 22.5 out of 40. Number 13 brings in Zona Seeker. Honestly, I prefer the old name Zone Seek, but for the new age kids we'll call it Zona Seeker. This is a get from the auction house, and if you want to see a manipulation video to get this in the SNES, you can check it out in the description below. The spells on this Esper are pretty booty with Rasp at ×20, Osmos ×15, and Shell ×5. The summon will do a shell on your entire party, so if you're worried about magic incoming, Zone Seeker's got your back for magic reduction. The big booster this gal gives us is +2 on magic. This can turn you into a powerhouse pretty early on. We'll find other Espers with +2 magic, but this is our earliest one we can get. 7 out of 10 accessibility, the level up bonus is a beautiful 8 out of 10. The summon is a niche 4.5 out of 10, and the spells are a disappointing 3 out of 10. Still a 22.5 out of 40 to take home. Number 12, we got Ramuh. The old wise sage is here to crack some lightning. You pick him up at the top of Zozo after a nice long lecture. His level up bonus is a stamina +1, which helps with regen ticks, but it also hurts against things like sap, seizure, and poison ticks, making them hit a little bit harder. So maybe not something you really want to grind up. This is our earliest chance of a tier 2 elemental spell. We get Thunder ×10, Thundara ×2, and Poison ×5. Poison can be useful as well until we get Bio later on. He does do a Thunder All spell, which, shocker, it does a spell power of 50. And it does suffer from split damage. Out of the first 4 summons we grab early on, he is the best of them by far. Because he is a Zozo grab, we'll call it a 9 out of 10. The boost can be more of a detriment than a helpful boost, so we're gonna call that a 3 out of 10. The summon is good in the Opera and going through Magitech Factory for a 5 out of 10, and also good against machines. Finally, the spells bring it home with a 6 out of 10 for a final score, 23 out of 40. Number 11, we got Ifrit, stuck in the trash compactor section of the Magitech Factory with his girlfriend Shiva. Ifrit is a much better summon with this rhetoric. He gets a special accessibility shared only with Shiva. He gives us access to the fire tier 2 spell Fyro, which is a big draw along with the fact he raises our strength on level up, +1. The summon itself, while it looks really sick, isn't that strong with a spell power of 51. He's nothing super crazy as far as Espers go, but he's just solid early. Accessibility grants him an 8 out of 10. The level up bonus going towards the strength is a decent 5 out of 10 as we get Bismarck shortly on afterwards to give us the +2. The summon usefulness is okay at best with another 5 out of 10, and the spells learned is a 5 out of 10. Fire and Drain are just sorta whatever. Fyra is typically the goal. 23 out of 40 overall. He brings only a small amount of heat to this kitchen. Starting off the top 10, we got Raiden. If you decide to upgrade Odin in the castle below the underground, this is what you get. This is the only Esper where you lose one to gain another. The summon has a higher hit rate than Odin with a field-wide instant death hit rate of 140 versus 110. However, he is generally seen as worse in a couple of aspects. He does teach quick at ×1, which grants the target 2 uninterrupted turns for a high cost of 99 MP. The level up bonus is strength +2, which is pretty good, but Odin just has a better level up bonus, and we'll get there when we get there. Accessibility is going to take a bit of a knock, since this list will assume you try to use Odin a little bit before changing to Raiden instead of insta-swapping, which means you have to come back. So for that, the score takes a 3 out of 10. The level up bonus is a nice 7 out of 10, since strength can be a pretty good stat to increase. The summon usefulness, I'll give a 4.5 out of 10. This can be a bit wonky because yes, if you did a Muddle Phantom on everything, you could theoretically be able to one-shot everything on the SNES since they'd all be basically vanished doomed. But this won't work in other things like the PR or the GBA version. The spell Learned, which is just the one, is slow to learn, but it is a good spell, so we'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. Final score is a 23 out of 40. Number 9, we have Valagarmonda. This name is a mouthful if I'm being honest, but this is our boy who teaches us the tier 3 spells, Firaga, Blizzaga, Thundaga. If you are an elemental fiend to hit weaknesses, this is your boy. Unless you want to use the summon. You see, he will use a spell called Try Disaster where he attacks with fire, ice, and thunder with a spell power of 110. That makes sense. The issue is if the enemy absorbs any of those elements, they just absorb the whole attack. This really hurts him. Aside from the pretty useful spell he gives, albeit at a slow rate, he also does give +2 magic on level up. You find him in the Narshe Snowfield, so in theory you could go pretty early, but you'll definitely want to go in with the plan, either using fire or defense ignoring abilities. So some prep will be required. Because of that, I'll say he has an accessibility score of 4 out of 10. The level up bonus is a sweet 8 out of 10 because I value magic over strength. Not saying strength is bad, magic takes less effort to get good versus strength. The summon can be good, but because of how it can also screw you over, it suffers a 5 out of 10. And the spell usefulness, we can call it 7 out of 10. Overall, he's still a decent 24 out of 40. At number 8, we have Golem, the other Esper found in the auction house, and he's a pretty good defensive Esper. He teaches magic, he teaches Protect at ×5, Stop ×5, and Cure at ×5. So you get some pretty decent spells at a very reasonable rate. He does give stamina +2 on the level up bonus, but we've already talked about how much stamina can both help and frick you over. The summon itself will block physical damage equal to the HP of the summoner. So you'd want to use this on your higher HP characters for a highest value. It's good against enemies like Gigantos who are fast and mostly or purely physical. Since you can get him as soon as we can get the airship, we'll give that a 7 out of 10. The level up bonuses will only get a 3.5 out of 10 since I don't want characters dropping to really high damage poison ticks. The summon is quite useful when used properly to a 9 out of 10, and the spells learned, while not the greatest thing in the world, no one would scoff at to have on someone who maybe won't use a lot of magic for a 5 out of 10. 24.5 out of 40 Esper in my mind. Number 7, Meduine. Oh look, another Magitech Factory survivor. Also spoilers, Terra's dad. Surely he has to be good, right? Initially, I figured Meduine probably wouldn't even break the top 10, let alone almost the top 5, but let's take a peek. He teaches all tier 2 spells at a ×3 rate. This can get you a nice little power boost shortly leaving the factory with elemental weaknesses. On top of that, he gives a +1 to magic, so that magic will get even stronger. The summon is really the downside. It's non-elemental damage, which on itself is fine, but he has a spell power of 45, so it hits weaker than Ifrit or Shiva or Ramuh, and you can't hit any elemental weaknesses. If we take a look at the breakdown here, he has an accessibility rating of 7 out of 10. The level up bonus gives him another 7 out of 10. Learning the tier 2 spells rather quickly makes it so we can get another 7 out of 10. Unfortunately, the summon being so underwhelming is only a 3.5 out of 10, but that still does get us 24.5 out of 40. Number 6 brings in Fenrir. I've always seen Fenrir as a better golem for the most part. It helps to mitigate physical damage, but in a different way. The summon will put the image effect on your characters, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this is the only way to get image in this game? You get an MP plus 30% on level up, which isn't groundbreaking but not something I'd want to complain about either. You can teleport times 10, banish times 5, and stop times 3. So the spells are okay. Stop is great for a couple of bosses, banish can work in a lot of certain areas, and teleport is nice for not needing teleport stones anymore. You get him after beating Fumbaba in the World of Ruin, which you can do as soon as you have an airship. This grants him a 6 out of 10 rating. The level up bonus is a 5 out of 10 since, while MP is nice, you're gonna have better level ups. The summon giving image is really nice, and this is the reason why we love this guy for an 8.5 out of 10. Unlike Golem, your HP doesn't matter for the effectiveness of the summon, and the spells are modest with a 5.5 out of 10 for a grand total 25.5 out of 40. It's a pretty good Esper. Number 5, we have Odin, or Raiden version 1.0 with some differences. The main differences is, even though the summon is still an instant death chance across the field, the hit rate drops from 140 to 110. That's not why we like this Esper though. He teaches Meteor, albeit at a ×1 rate, but it is much better to grab an Esper than getting into the World of Ruin, but it is much easier of an Esper to grab for learning Meteor than getting Crusader is. Depending on the version you're playing, Odin will either give you a +1 to speed on the SNES or GBA, or a +2 to speed on the PR. Since there is some PR recency bias, as it's the most accessible version to the general public these days, the +2 speed is incredibly massive and honestly almost stupid. So with the 4 out of 10 accessibility rate, the level up bonus is a banging 9 out of 10. The summon itself isn't as good as Raiden just due to a lower hit rate for a 4 out of 10, and Meteor can be a decent spell to have, especially early on for 8.5 out of 10. This gives Odin a 25.5 out of 40. Number 4, we have Ketoblapas. I honestly don't know how to say this name normally, that's just how I always say it. This is the final Magitech survivor, I promise. I think it has a bit of tweaking in the PR, or maybe I just have a massive placebo effect. But Shote seems to work on way more things way more often, especially in places like the floating continent, than it does in the previous versions. The hit rate is 96, which is ever so slightly higher than Death by 1, but it hits everything on screen with petrification. It gives a +10 HP bonus, but the spells are sort of slept on. Bio is your highest tier poison spell while also inflicting the poison status, and it gives you a ×8 learning rate. Break is ×5 and Death is ×2 for some petrification and instant death. As I'm talking about it, I don't feel like this guy should be in the top 5, yet here he is in number 4 with a 7 out of 10 accessibility, 4 out of 10 level up bonus since HP is nice but not amazing, 7.5 out of 10 summon usefulness as you can nuke a lot of things down for some easy experience, especially in the PR version like I said. The spells learned are rather decent for a 7 out of 10, and this brings us to another 25.5 out of 40. Number 3 has Quetzalli, probably one of the easiest Espers to grab in the World of Ruin, but also an easy one to miss. You visit Sid where you started on the beach and you'll see it just sitting there for the taking. The summon has an interesting effect. Everyone turns into a dragoon for a turn, flying into the skies on a bird. We learned some pretty useful haste and debuff spells at fast rates off of this guy. You get slow and haste at ×20, Sloga and Hasteska, which is just slow and haste over everything at ×2, and float ×5. The Esper bonus level up is where we get some PR bias, as in the older versions he gives nothing, but in the Pixel Remaster version he actually gives a +1 speed after an update, so that makes it a whole lot better. With it being an almost instant World of Ruin grab, we can call that a 6 out of 10. The level up bonus of speed being the most busted stat in the game grants it an 8 out of 10. The summon can be useful for things like dodging Ultima Magimaster or other things like that, but otherwise it's a little bit niche for a 4 out of 10. The spells, honestly mostly Sloga and Hasteska, grant an 8 out of 10 for a total of 26 out of 40. Bringing home the silver, we got Lakshmi. I really like this Esper. She's cute, she's helpful, she makes it so your party members can become good little white mages. Her summon has a spell power of 34 party-wide heal, which is always fun. But she also teaches Cure ×25, Cura ×16, Curaga ×1, Regen ×20, and Asuna ×20. You get her from finding Realm in Owzer's mansion, and this can vary on how quick you find it depending on if you save Shadow or not from the continent collapse. You get a stamina +2 on the level up bonus, which makes me a little sad since she could be so much more. But it is what it is. We will assume you saved Shadow for accessibility or else there'll be a messy rating, but we can call it a 6 out of 10. 3.5 out of 10 level up bonus since we've established I still hate stamina. But the summon itself is a simple and nice 8 out of 10, and the 9 out of 10 spells to learn. I really like white magic, in case you can't tell. 26.5 out of 40 Esper. And at number 1, we have Bahamut. And there's a reason why they call him the king. Honestly, I was surprised he was going to be up here, thinking about what it actually took for the rhetoric to be there. And then I realized he can be one of the first espers you get in the World of Ruin if you so choose. All you need to do is find Doomgaze and kill him, and wham bam thank you ma'am, we have Bahamut. He teaches Flare ×2 and also gives a whopping plus 50% HP bonus for massive gains if you so please. Atma weapon lovers, rejoice. The summon itself is a non-elemental damage spell with 92 spell power, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it ignores split damage and magic defense. This becomes the massive game changer. And again, this is why we call him the king. 6 out of 10 accessibility, 6.5 out of 10 level up bonus, 9 out of 10 summon usefulness because he's just a baller, and a 7 out of 10 on the spells learned, which is just Flare ×2, but it's still Flare ×2. This gives him a 28.5 out of 40. And that's my list on the espers in Final Fantasy VI. The rhetoric was pretty harsh in this video, but it almost had to be just to make things a little more balanced and consistent. I thought the ranking would actually be easy for this, and the next thing I know, it gets pretty complicated pretty quick. And this was my best solution to make it a little bit better. Overall, I am quite happy with how the lists look. Some espers may look like they're in funky places, but the numbers make sense, and that's good enough for me. And maybe we learned something along the way in this video, which is the main goal anyways. So what is your favorite esper and why? Let me know down below. Don't forget to hit that silly sub button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.